He gives you the cash, he so does give you the cash. He will get money from his videos, he will do what he can. My name is StarkyBooty32, and this video is going to be part of a new series that I'm making on my channel, where I explain to everyone the reasons for why the countries I think are better than Australia are better than Australia. And in this first episode of this series, I am going to be giving you all 15 reasons as to why the United States is better than Australia. And without any further ado, let's begin. Number 1, it's richer and has the world's largest economy. The United States has the largest economy out of any other country in the world with its GDP. The US has a GDP of over $20 trillion, while Australia, in comparison, only has a GDP of $1 trillion. And when you really compare them, you can really see that the US is much more richer than Australia in comparison, and Australia is poorer. Number 2, it has more cities and areas to explore. Australia is mostly desolate with a giant red desert in the middle, and our major cities are mainly along the east coast. However, in the United States, there are cities widespread throughout the continent, and there are barely any deserts except for in the southwest. This gives people more of an opportunity to explore the different regions and more diverse environments in the US, which there are more of there than in Australia. Number 3, American accents are better than Australian accents. In Australia, a lot of the slang and accents that we have here can be a bit irritating and annoying. I'm Australian myself, and I'm glad that I have the cultivated accent and not the broad accent, and I don't use the slang all that much. However, I simply adore American accents, and I think they sound sweet with the way that they pronounce certain words, and their slang is a lot more generalised than what we have in Australia. And I would much rather hang out with a Texan than a bogan, as Texans don't sound annoying tough like bogans do, but they sound good tough. Number 4, most of the movies and TV shows that we watch come from there. The movies that have been made by Australia's film industry aren't all that great and decent, but the American film industry makes awesome blockbuster movies and TV shows that we get from major companies in Hollywood. And most of the movies and TV shows that we've seen throughout our lives in the Western world were made in America, and no country makes our favourite franchises better than the US does. Number 5, it has a much more powerful military. The United States has a much more powerful military than Australia, and the biggest military in the world. If the United States and Australia ever got into a war, the United States would undeniably win and trample Australia's troops. I'm not saying that's ever gonna happen, which it obviously won't, but that example does show how much more developed the US is and how much more powerful the US is than Australia. Number 6, it has more of a freedom of speech. In Australia recently, there was a situation in which the YouTuber Friendly Jordies got into legal trouble with Deputy New South Wales Premier John Barilaro over some jokes which he poked fun at the Deputy PM. However, nothing like that would ever happen in the United States, as they have First Amendment rights which protect free speech, but Australia has issues with free speech, but the United States allows anything to be said. Number 7, their currency is more valuable. As I just mentioned that America is richer than Australia, their currency is also more valuable than Australia's currency. $1 Australian dollar equals about 3/4 of a US dollar, which means that average Americans would be slightly richer than average Australians, and that's also one of the reasons why they're richer than Australia, as their currency is more valuable. Number 8, it has better infrastructure than Australia. I keep hearing things about how the United States has terrible infrastructure. Specifically, Lodal has said this, and sure, they do have some crumbling bridges here and there, but Australia Australia actually has worse infrastructure than the USA. According to a recent list, the United States was ranked 13th in terms of infrastructure quality, but Australia was ranked 29th and isn't even in the top 25. Sure, America has some crumbling bridges here and there that are really bad, but in Australia we have got a lot worse. Number 9, it's less hot and dry. A lot of Australia tends to be very hot and dry throughout most of the year, with occasional droughts here and there caused by ENSO, but in the United States the only hot parts are typically in the south, and ENSO doesn't affect the US. Because of that, the United States has a much more sustainable and habitable climate, and one that I can definitely live in, as I prefer it to be cold rather than hot. Number 10, the rest of the world accounts for its global output. The United States accounts for 22% of the world's global output, and every other country in the world depends on that. However, if we were to put Australia in the place of the USA, our global output wouldn't do much, and we couldn't do shit to account for the rest of the world's economy. This just goes to show how much more of an important nation the US is when accounting for the world's output. Number 11, it's less isolated from the rest of the world. Australia is very fucking far away from well-known places such as North America and Europe, and because of that it's very fucking expensive to fly there and back, and it takes about a day to fly there and back. However, the United States is closer to some other good places such as Canada and Europe, and because of that it takes shorter of a time to fly there than from Australia, and because of that you'd be able to travel a lot more to those places from the US rather than barely travelling to them from Australia. Number 12, more people move to the US than Australia. In Australia we have a handful of migrants here who have moved here for whatever reason, but in the United States they have a large number of migrants who have moved to that almighty powerful nation. This means that more people want to move there, and seeing as more people want to move to the US than Australia, that means that the majority of the migrants agree that there are more opportunities and better of a lifestyle in America than Australia. Number 13, there are less bushfires. In Australia we have problems with bushfires all the damn time because of our gum trees which have flammable oil. However, in the US there are some bushfires, but only ever in California, as they grow the gum trees from Australia there. Australia is filled with gum trees which are the causes for disasters like Black Saturday, but most of the US is bushfire free, and Americans don't have to worry about bushfires with the exception of California. Number 14, the seasons are at the correct time. Australia is in the southern hemisphere, and because of that it's winter in the middle of the year but summer at the start and end of the year. However, in the United States it's the opposite, and because of that there are certain holidays which are in the right seasons that they're associated with, like Christmas for instance, which should be in winter rather than summer, and Easter which should be in spring rather than autumn. The US gets its holidays with its seasons correct, while Australia does not. And number 15, they own Alaska and Hawaii. The United States owns two overseas states called Alaska and Hawaii. However, Australia doesn't have much overseas land apart from Van Diemen's Land and a few little islands here and there. Hawaii makes for a great vacation destination where you can experience Polynesian culture and visit its beaches, and Alaska is a good place to go skiing and see the northern lights in winter. Because of that, there are more opportunities with more land and holidays to experience in America than Australia. And everyone, that's 15 reasons as to why the United States is a better country than Australia, but it's not the only country that's superior to my country, because in the next video in this series I'm going to be explaining to you why Canada is better than Australia, so stay tuned for it. And until next time, my name is StarkyBooty32. Thank you for listening, humanity. My name is StarkyBooty32. I'm one of the best people on YouTube.